welcome to this reconvened hearing. As it is a reconvened hearing, we do not need to deal with the first item, the second and the third item and fourth item on the agenda, but I will ask colleagues just to confirm that they have no declarations of interest either in this application or the one to follow. Thank you. So we are here this morning to consider an application for a review of the licence of Barber Foods at 75 High Street, Gillingham. Can I ask all of you if you have the papers for this morning's meeting, which are here, and they include a guide to how this will happen. Okay, if you have that, then I will ask my colleagues, starting on this side, to introduce themselves, and we will go round the table.
Councillor Sylvia Burton.
So I'm PC Dan Hunt from Police Licensing.
PC Andre Smuts from Kent Police Licensing.
Barbara Murray, Medway Public Health.
Good morning, councillors. I'm Philip Colvin of Queen's Counsel. I'm representing the licensee. I've got sitting next to me Mr. Killich, who's the licensing agent who instructs me. I've placed him strategically because he's also helping to translate into Turkish. And then I've got Mr. Temer, and then I've got Mr. Aslan, who are the directors of the licensed company.
Thank you.
Franco Di Fazio, Senior Licensing Officer for Gravesham and Medway Shared Licensing Services.
Venki Krishna.
Stephen Platt, clerking today.
Gary Hackwell, Councillor Gary Hackwell.
Diane Chambers. Right, then I will ask Mr. Di Fazio to outline why we're here.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. The Licensing Authority has received an application for review from Kent Police as a responsible authority in respect of the existing premises licence for Bubba Food and Wine, 75 High Street, Gillingham, Kent, ME7 1BJ. The grounds for review relate to 3 of the 4 licensing objectives. They are the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of public nuisance, protection of children from harm. This application has been correctly advertised in accordance with regulations made under the Licensing Act, and the application papers were served on the relevant parties for the licensed premises along with the other responsible authorities. This hearing has been arranged following an adjournment from the initial hearing held on the 26th of April. In addition to the review application papers, representations have been received from Public Health as a responsible authority in support of the review application. The supplementary evidence supporting the review application has also been submitted to the police, as have submissions from the licensee's legal team. In particular, in the report, your attention is drawn to the following. The review application can be found at Appendix A, and that's pages 11 to 18. The premises licence is included along with the plans, and that's Appendix B, and that's on pages 19 to 23. Appendix C on pages 25 to 27 contains the representation from Public Health, and Appendix D, which is on pages 29 to 34, contains their supporting evidence. Appendix E, which is on page 36, is a supplementary information submission from Kent Police, and Appendix F, that runs from pages 37 to 42 in the report, is a statement from PC Hunt in relation to this. Appendix G, and this runs from pages 45 to 47, contains CCTV stills from Kent Police, and I also understand that there is some CCTV that is to be shown on the police laptop. And finally, there are 2 additional supplementary submissions, Agenda 1 and Agenda 2, and these contain submissions from the licensee and additional evidence from the CCTV from Kent Police. And finally, the panel's attention is drawn to the grounds for review in relation to the licensing objectives of the Licensing Act and also paragraph 3 of the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fatio. Before I go to the applicant, I just need to inform members that there may be issues which will require the committee to go into closed session. So please be aware of that. That will be when there is video footage, I believe. Yeah, okay, fine, okay.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry to butt in. That was a very helpful I wasn't quite sure what to...
So I did email Mr. Kilic this morning, so hopefully we have...
It's going to be reflected. Oh, thank you very much. I just want to be got everything.
Yes.
That's more than kind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Fine, thank you. Fine. Can I ask you to use your microphones?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just see clarity on the showing of the CCTV footage? Is it the opinion of the Chair that we're going to close session for that because we have no objection either way? I'm not sure whether...
We don't mind it being shown publicly.
There's one clip.
There's one clip we'd like to show in closed session. However, the rest, we're totally fine with our stills and footage in open session. Thank you, Chair. Baba Food and Wine is a grocery store licensed for off-sales 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's located on the High Street, Gillingham, close to the junction with Canterbury Street. This is a busy town centre, location surrounded by a variety of retail and residential properties. Gillingham High Street and the immediate surrounding area suffers a high level of crime, disorder and antisocial behaviour. The area is covered by both a Public Space Protection Order, PSPO, and Cumulative Impact Policy. Currently, the High Street is suffering a high and unacceptable levels of persons regularly found to be street drinking and consuming alcohol within this control zone. Persons found to be street drinking are often persons that are alcohol dependent, consuming high-strength beers and ciders. An inevitable consequence of street drinking could be aggression, public nuisance, public urination, alcohol-related litter, and crime and disorder. It has become increasingly evident to both Kent Police Town Centre team and licensing officers that street drinking levels in Gillingham appear to be on the increase, with the immediate area in relation to the premises being of particular concern. It is evident to Kent Police that the premises has a large effect on the public nuisance issues in this high street. The following are a few incidents which Kent Police would like to refer to by way of examples as to how irresponsibly the premises is being run. So I'll start my examples from the 1st of January this year, but hasten to add that the location has been associated with public nuisance, crime and disorder for quite some time. In lieu of this, I attended the premises and spoke to the new DPS, Mr. Tima, on the 26th of October. During this meeting, I reminded Mr. Tima that as a responsible DPS, he is to ensure that the premises is not to sell alcohol to drunk people. He informed me that he had been involved in the industry for many years and was acutely aware of this. On Saturday, the 1st of January 22, approximately 1 o'clock in the morning, PC Hunt and I saw a male sat on a bench directly outside St Mark's Church on the High Street, consuming what appears to be a can of beer or lager or cider. So St Mark's Church is directly next door to Baba Food and Wine. Sat on the ground outside of the premises, surrounded by her bedding and belongings, was a female who appeared to be homeless. A male went into the premises and purchased a bottle of cider. We were watching this at the time. Upon exiting the premises, the male engaged in conversation with the female. She then produced a bona fide wine glass, and the male proceeded to fill her glass with the cider that he had just bought, and the female consumed it in the street. So in the interest of engaging in a stepped approach with the premises, PC Hunt and I entered the shop and had a discussion with the staff about serving alcohol to persons who would then consume in the street. The staff member insisted that the female had previously been barred from the shop, and due to the male buying and giving her cider, that he too would be barred henceforth. So this decision displays that the staff were fully aware of the licensing objectives involving the prevention of a public nuisance. Kent Police Licensing often receive updates and information regarding street drinking from their high street team colleagues and the local authority's CCTV. And as a result, we became aware of an incident on Tuesday, the 1st of February 22, approximately 11 a.m, where a male was seen to drink from a can on the high street, having come out of Bubba Food and Wine. The male can be seen on the premises CCTV to buy 2 cans of alcohol. I'm going to need the CCTV. 2 cans of alcohol from the alcohol fridge. After drinking it in the street until 11:22, the male can be seen on council CCTV leaving the area drinking out of the can. I'd like to invite my colleague to operate as my IT Spock.
Am I okay just to do it to the big screen?
Chair, there is an inordinate volume of footage that we have, so what I will ask, if it's acceptable, just to have my colleague play the salient snippets, the actual points at which they either purchase the alcohol or drink, and we won't be going through an hour's worth for each incident, of which we have many. This is a view of inside Bubba Food and Wine. It is one of the camera angles within the shop, and it details staff selling. Bottom right, you can see the chap ringing up a bottle of wine, albeit our incident is 10:59 and 40 seconds. Sure. So this fellow here with the hat on, elderly gentleman, pops into the shop. Where he's just been is the aisle dedicated to the fridges for the beers and ciders. He then leaves the shop. So we'll go to council CCTV. Clip number 2, Dan. So Bubba Food and Wine is just underneath that sign that says open 24/7. And if you follow down towards where the cursor is now, that's where the benches are favoured by many of the shop's customers. We don't see him, Dan, go there, but at 11:22 is when he walks off. That shadow there is the male getting up with his dog. Still having a good old swig. And then he leaves frame, and that's that. That's that incident. If you'd like to cue the next one up, clip 3, Dan. On Tuesday, the 1st of February 2022, approximately 16:39, a male purchased a can of what is suspected to be alcohol from the shop. Then exited the shop, 16:42, and as per council's CCTV, he seemed to be sat on the bench outside of St Mark's Church. Now you see that lady over there with her McDonald's soda in a cup. That's where the chap will find himself. (16:42) and exits the shop. That was it. So the fellow walks out of the shop pretty much now. Yeah, fast forward. If you take my word for the fact that we can see him drinking out of that can, but at 16:56, the chap stood up. Okay. He then goes off for a walk, but leaving that can discarded on the bench as per that cursor. Moving on. So on Thursday, the 3rd of February 2022, 09:42 hours, officers from the High Street team spoke with 2 males who they saw drinking alcohol on the bench. Again in front of St Mark's Church. After talking to the males, the officers then seized and disposed of the alcohol. Suspecting that the alcohol had been bought from Bub Food and Wine, the premises CCTV was seized and viewed to show that approximately 09:16 hours, Dan? One male buys a single can of HCC cider. That's the chap buying HCC cider. If we go to 09:20. This is 09:20 in the morning. That chap with the scarf is our chap that makes the second purchase. So these males were engaged in conversation with our colleagues from the High Street team, and we've taken several stills from their body-worn footage of the persons involved, again at that location, just in front of St Mark's Church, just the first 3 slides down. That's the fellow with the scarf. That's his drink over there. Scroll down. It's just another view of the officers pouring out that can of HCC cider. Those fellows were invited to disperse, which they then promptly did. Thank you, Dan. Later that same day, on the 3rd, Kent Police were made aware of another male who was seen to be drinking alcohol outside the shop. Premises CCTV again was seized and viewed to show that approximately 16:12, the male purchases 2 cans of Wharf red lager. After drinking the beer outside, the male then walks off at 16:18. So premises CCTV shows at 16:12 and 20 seconds. So the next clip is from Council CCTV, exit 16:13:18. So that's the fellow there that's just purchased that alcohol. He leaves shortly after that, 16:18:45, he disappears. That is Walker Red Lager at 5.2% ABV. Now, the next incident involves a clip of footage which we're not able to show in open session. That's the only one that we have. We would ask that we do that at the end in closed session. But on Saturday, the 5th of February 2022, approximately 05:37 in the morning, the premises called police and reported a drunk male fighting with their customers outside the premises. They alleged that the drunk male had also caused damage to the shop, 4 members of public's cars, and had reportedly been causing issues for 2 hours since approximately 03:30 for the premises. Police arrived and the male was arrested, during which time he assaulted a police officer. Upon viewing the premises CCTV of the incident, it became apparent that the staff, who said he'd been causing them issues for 2 hours, had sold him 2 cans of lager 12 minutes before they called us. This was Perla Black, 7.6% beer. Then they called us up 12 minutes later, reporting that he'd been causing them issues for 2 hours. CCTV will show a whole host of him kicking things, kicking cars, fighting with customers, kicking the premises doors, all sorts of bits and bobs, but we can't show that right now. That's a live case, and it would prejudice the case and possibly be a data breach. Moving on to Thursday, the 17th of February 22, approximately 08:39 in the morning, PC Hunt observed two males of a dishevelled appearance walking along the high street in the direction of the premises. One male was seen to sit on the bench directly outside of St Mark's Church, whilst another went into the premises empty-handed. The male exited the shop with a large bottle of Frosty Jack cider, 7.5% ABV. He then joined the male sat on the bench, where they remained consuming the cider in the street, sharing the bottle between them. PC Hunt entered the shop and saw an empty space where the Frosty Jack cider display is kept within the shop. He then attended the linked premises 2 doors along, linked to the premises, and spoke with Mr. Teamer. The gent sat talking. Apologies. So he then spoke with Mr. Teamer, and after hearing PC Hunt's concerns regarding the premises selling alcohol to street drinkers, Mr. Teamer seemed dismissive and assured PC Hunt that he and his staff would not sell alcohol to street drinkers and that the male must have bought it elsewhere. So this shows that the DPS is fully aware of his responsibilities under the Licensing Act, albeit PC Hunt reiterated the fact that his premises attracts an inordinate amount of antisocial and nuisance behaviour. PC Hunt also reminded Mr. Teamer of the fact that the High Street is covered by a PSPO. PC Hunt also had a word about the previous incident where the arrested male had caused damage to the shop. That's the one that we couldn't show the CCTV of yet. And again said that the male had purchased the alcohol elsewhere. That's what Mr. Teamer said, that the male that we can clearly see them serving had bought his beer elsewhere. So we've seen the footage of the male buying the 2 cans of Polar Black, so this is clearly incorrect. During this discussion, Mr. Teamer questioned as to why he and his staff should assist in combating the issues around street drinking, apportioning the blame on police not providing enough officers to address this issue. PC Hunt reminded him nonetheless that despite his opinion, it was incumbent upon him as a DPS to promote the licensing objectives. Mr. Teamer then suggested that his shop sold mostly low-strength beers of 5% and below, and only one brand of high-strength beer. PC Hunt then viewed the shelves and pointed out to him that the high-volume beers of ciders were on display, of which there were many, some of which are 9%. So Mr. Teamer explained that when he'd said high-strength beer a couple of minutes before, he only meant beer and not including the high-strength ciders in his earlier statement. He explained that he would be prepared to remove the one high-strength beer from the shelves, but not the high-strength ciders, as the area is deprived and the locals liked the high-strength ciders, which brought business for their revenue to their business. As PC Hunt left the premises, Mr. Teamer looked at the 2 males who were still outside, that PC Hunt had observed earlier on, drinking the Frosty Jack cider, and drew PC Hunt's attention to them, saying, "You see," or words to the effect, "You see, those 2 over there, they are drinking, we do not serve them." PC Hunt then told Mr. Teamer that they were exactly the 2 males that he'd seen purchase alcohol from the shop. So Mr. Teamer became angry, seemingly with his staff, assuring PC Hunt that he would be having words with them. So this is captured on premises CCTV, where the male is seen to buy clip number 10. Oh, 08:38. You're there. 08:39. That chap that we just saw is Mr. Teamer. Fellow in that khaki beige coloured jacket is the chap that buys the Frosty Jack. This is the fellow that Mr. Teemer said had not bought his alcohol at his shop. On Saturday, the 19th of February 22, approximately 11:46, two males were approached by town centre PCSOs, police community support officers who are high street officers, and they were seen to be drinking on the benches in front of St Mark's Church. The males indicated that they had purchased the beer from Baba Food and Wine. The officers directed the males to leave at 12:01. Supplementary on the so those stills are again taken from the officers' body cameras. They were then instructed to leave. On the 25th of February 22, approximately 11 in the morning, PC Hunt was at the premises conducting CCTV inquiries relating to several incidents. Whilst viewing unrelated CCTV footage, PC Hunt just happened to see the footage of the male purchasing the Frosty Jack bottle that we'd just seen in that khaki jacket, confirming that the shop had sold him the alcohol, contradicting Mr. Teemer's previous assurance. Amazingly, whilst watching the footage from 8 days before, the same male entered the shop again whilst PC Hunt was conducting the inquiries contemporaneously and bought another bottle of Frosty Jack cider from the staff on duty in front of PC Hunt. So when PC Hunt expressed his shock at the purchase, the staff found this irony amusing, referring to him as, he's okay, he's a good guy, or words to that effect. So PC Hunt then spoke with who he believes to be Mr. Teemer's partner, who assured him that the premises intended to discontinue large bottles of Frosty Jack and White Lightning to appease police, but only once they had sold all their remaining stock. When she was asked about the high-strength beers and ciders in the cans, she too maintained that the demand for these were high and that they would continue to sell these because they were a business after all. Shortly after PC Hunt left the shop, he saw the male whom he had seen buying the Frosty Jack on the bench in front of the shop. With him was another well-named alcohol, who we can say is an alcoholic-dependent street drinker, consuming the cider. That's on the bench straight, right in front. So we have clip number 12 down. (11:32:54). Those fellows towards the right, next to that bin, one of the ones who went into, CCTV became aware and they were quite interested in the two of them, so they honed in. 11:32:54. Okay. The male described as good guy then hands the bottle of Frosty Jack, or relinquishes it to the chap in the wheelchair. That's it. In a very short while, the male in the wheelchair is again seen to down the rest of the Frosty Jack. That's it, he finishes it and they just go on that. So in light of the of the unabating street drinking issues, after advising the premises now on 4 separate documented occasions, approximately 1300 on the 1st of March 2022, PC Hunt and I and myself attended the premises and handed over the review paperwork to Mr. Timur and his partner. An explanation again was provided to Mr. Timur with reference to Kent Police's motivation regarding the public nuisance issue of street drinking. Mr. Timur pointed out a crate of 1 litre bottles of Frosty Jack, which they explained would no longer be sold once the crate had been sold off again. On Tuesday, the 22nd of March, approximately 10:30 a.m., an intoxicated male was seen by our colleague from Public Health entering Baba Food and Wine carrying what she identified to be a can of Captain Morgan rum and coke. He then purchased a 25 cl bottle of vodka from the staff, holding the rum and coke as he went into the shop. He then exited the shop and sat on the bench opposite outside of Burger King, which is the bench just directly across the way, and drank the small bottle of vodka. After that, he then threw the empty bottle onto the high street. Within a few minutes, and after drinking some more rum and coke, the male left the bench and walked away up the high street. And he was, at the time, sat next to another female who was also drinking a bottle of Acer cider. Well, CCTV shows the male entering the shop at 10:37:58. This is an open container of rum and coke. We'll go to council CCTV footage now, where the male is seen to exit the shop at 10:39 and pops himself onto that bench. Just over there, he's sat next to that female in the orange. So he's just about to open up the little miniature bottle, swigs away, right next to the bin, chucks on the ground. Yeah. He then pops himself off a short while later. A week after this incident, Kent Police Licensing submitted their first of 2 supplementary submissions with evidence of this incident. So after having advised the premises about doing more to prevent street drinkers on 5 occasions now, the submission of the review paperwork and the submission of additional paperwork on the 7th of May 2022, approximately 03:30 hours, Council CCTV reported an unresponsive male outside of the shop with a group of his associates attempting to rouse him. At 05:27 hours, South East Kent Ambulance Service attended to ascertain that the male was just very intoxicated, albeit unresponsive. Later, approximately 04:45, an intoxicated female alleged that the males in the group were fighting with her and made comments of self-harm. She explained that she had walked 40 minutes to get to Bubba Food and Wine, and that her intention was to finish her alcohol and then leave to go and I quote, apologies, slit her throat. The female can then be seen drinking on the bench in front of the shop at 03:10 hours. Council CCTV, if you want to just cue it up, Dan. Clip number 15. So premises CCTV, but Council CCTV shows the staff at the shop being acutely aware of the groups of street drinkers, as at 02:55 hours are seen to be looking at the group. There is a Council CCTV of the premises of persons from the group then entering the shop, buying alcohol and drinking it directly outside for a period of approximately 2 hours during these early hours of the morning. We'll whiz through some footage of them buying alcohol in the shop. 03:02:45, Dan. That fellow there with the hat, with the hood. Buys 2 bottles of Budweiser. Is that 3 bottles of Budweiser? 3 bottles of Budweiser. This is at 3:02. Yep. 03:33:22. That female there is the next purchase. You will see her in a minute join the group, where she buys 3 cans of Tyskie lager. 03:41:33. Oh, 03:41, Dan? That's 03:33. Yeah, 03:41. That chap in the baseball bat buys 1 can of, I think there might be Carpaccio beer, not 9%. Okay, then 04:07. That chap there buys 2 cans of Holston Pilsner. These are all people involved in that group outside who were there for a period of 2 hours, which the premises were aware of. Seemingly. Okay. 04:14. Same fellow with another purchase of a single can of what looks to be Karpacki beer. Okay, so we'll go to council CCTV now of the group outside. Back now up towards 0248. And 51. So the bench outside of St Mark's Church is where they're at the moment. He then joins the group 0251 and 15. So that's a staff member over there looking up towards the group. Goes back into the shop. 0252. That chap's just gone into the shop. He exits again at 025409 and rejoins the group. He'd be one of the purchasers we saw from within the premises a short while back. That fella there. 0310. That female sat on the bench next to that fellow is a female who later phones up saying that she's going to go and self-harm after she's finished drinking her alcohol, having walked 40 minutes to the location. Oh, 0445, please, Dan. 0445. It might be on the next clip. That's the fellow that his associates were concerned for. That was the subject of South East Coast ambulance call out. So that lady sat on the floor is the lady that we spoke about who was intent on self-harming. She has actually wet herself sitting in her pool of urine. Can you just go back to where she was sat there? Just go back a bit. Dan, we leave that one there, but I wanted to get a bit where she's seen to throw an empty beer can into the street. It's there or thereabouts, but I haven't pinpointed on the exact time, so we'll move on from there. Chair, it's the opinion of Kent Police that if the shop were not open, selling alcohol to vulnerable persons, that this whole group would not have gravitated to this location, causing the issues that they did. It clearly shows that the need for emergency services response has increased, where they could be best utilised elsewhere. Moving on then, on the Wednesday, the 11th of May, a vulnerable male reported being robbed on the junction of the High Street and Canterbury Street, approximately 02:45 hours. Council CCTV shows the male being punched and kicked on the floor by a male, and he sustained several cuts to his face. The suspect, a well-known street drinker, drinking female, can then be seen to be walking away with the suspect, walking away from the scene. Premises and council CCTV show the suspect purchases 4 cans of Stella Artois and 4 cans of black currant cider at 0142. Do you want to cue it up, Dan? That fellow with the baseball cap on is our suspect. So this just details the purchase of his cigarettes, so we'll skip to where he comes back into the shop 10 minutes later, 01:41 and 15. So 10 minutes before this, where we just saw he'd purchased cigarettes, which are not that relevant, but it shows him hanging around outside in the area for some time before. Now, the fellow looking down the aisle is the DPS, Mr. Teemer. That chap with where Dan's cursor was just pointed at. The chap then leaves the shop, followed by the DPS, Mr. Teemer. Clearly interested in something. So, premises? Oh, sorry. Yeah, council. Okay. I've just had the nod from a colleague. We think the robbery one will also show in private, along with Okay, so we're going to leave that there at the moment. We'll make some points about that slightly later on. So having seen all the footage, I'm sure it would be safe to assume that if the premises were not selling alcohol at this time, that the persons involved will not find themselves at the location drinking, nor being violently attacked, which we will be seeing, requiring the need again for emergency services. So after these two incidences, these latest two incidences, on May the 26th, Kent Police served their second of their two supplementary submissions on the premises. Prior to submitting this full premises licence review application, Kent Police have taken on a considered and stepped approach with this premises, Chair, engaging with the staff and the DPS, explaining our concerns and offered advice and guidance on numerous occasions. In conversation with Kent Police, the DPS and his partner had offered to remove a small selection of high-strength products from sale, but not with immediate effect, proposing only to do so once all the stock of the particular product had been sold out. So the DPS was not prepared to remove all high-strength beers and ciders from sale and wished to continue to sell large quantity of such products for what would appear to be financially motivated. The DPS and the staff appear dismissive of the issues caused by street drinkers, and when challenged, have excused their actions by referring to the street drinker in question as being a good guy or he's okay, or similar type words. The street drinking is blatant and in full view, leaving Kent Police to believe that the premises must have knowledge of the fact and must know that they are fueling street drinking. The sales of alcohol evidenced above are instances of which Kent Police have been made aware or have identified. It is not, in that case, unreasonable to surmise that there are likely other instances that Kent Police and the authorities have not been made aware of or have intervened in. During the period where the premises have had a notice up in the window with reference to the impending review process, a member of the public attempted to send emails to the authority. Unfortunately, he was unable to, which unfortunately failed to send. Kent Police Licensing Department became aware of this issue through their PCSO colleagues on the High Street, who provided names of several persons, including this member of the public, who wished to express their opinion about the premises and all the antisocial behaviour linked to it by customers late at night. Incidents highlighted by these residents nonetheless included an incident which occurred after the consultation period nonetheless. And while speaking with a couple of these local residents, statements were obtained. One member of the public describes being new to the area and regrets moving within such close proximity to the location. They told police that late on Sunday the 8th of May, or during the early hours of Monday the 9th, they were woken up by vehicles seemingly racing up and down the high street, being very loud. The resident describes watching customers who buy alcohol from the shop to then consume it in their vehicles whilst playing loud music, having parties and shouting at one another. This rowdy and inconsiderate behaviour is not limited to weekends only and sometimes continues throughout the early hours. This noise disturbs their son, who sometimes is not consolable after being woken up. This resident is too scared to be named, so their details remain known to Kent Police only. Another resident describes there being a group of approximately 20 cars racing up and down the high street, being very loud during the evening of Sunday the 8th of May. These drivers were playing their music very loud and hanging around drinking alcohol, which they had purchased from Bubba Food and Wine, as witnessed by themselves. This resident describes this behaviour as constant and ongoing, with the worst nights being Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays. The resident conveyed the same feelings of distress felt by his friends and neighbours. This resident also explained that there are regularly street drinkers outside drinking alcohol bought from Bubba's. They would sometimes be drinking outside until 6 or 7 in the morning, with the situation getting worse recently. This resident describes these people as alcoholics who sit outside in the public eye and drink, finding it, he used the word, disgusting to watch. These residents also details also only known to us for fear of reprisals. Conversations with Mr. Timor and his absolute assurances that they do not sell to street drinkers lead Kent Police Licensing Team to believe that he is either choosing not to tell the truth, or he has little control over or knowledge about what happens in his shop. After having issued words of advice and warnings on at least 5 documented occasions now, the fact that the premises continue to sell alcohol to street drinkers and drunk persons shows that our advice and concerns are not being considered. It also shows that the premises, staff and DPS and the company directors have a blatant disregard for both the promoting of the licensing objectives and to the Licensing Act, and have little regard to either the SIP or the PSPO, or to the issues that are affecting the residents in this immediate area. Recently, Kent Police received the premises documentation pack. Within this pack is a statement made by Mr. Timor referring to the fact that since February 22, the premises had stopped stocking and selling high-strength beers. He named a couple, or a few, being Special Brew, Kestrel and Super Skol as examples. They'd also stopped serving other drinks favoured by street drinkers. That was February 22. 3 months after this, these items were purported to have been removed. On the 26th of May, PC Hunt attended the shop and happened to take several photos of the fridge shelves. At this time, there were various high-strength beers for sale, including OJ Premium Strong, 8.5%, Polar Black, 7.6%, Carpacchi Super, 9%, and also the aforementioned Super Skol Lager of 8%. 3 months after they said that they'd removed these from the shelves. So this proves that the premises had not stopped stocking and selling high street beers the February before. So also within the submitted dossier were photos of the premises refusal register. There were 16 photos in total. Some of them were duplicates. I do have all the facts and figures of which ones were duplicates if anyone is interested, but ultimately it reduced the amount of entries as per their dossier to 94 bona fide entries. Calculating since the 1st of October until when they submitted their documentation or took photos of their register on the 12th of May, it worked out to be 12.5 instances of refusal documented within this register. On the 17th of June, PC Hunt attended the shop along with a colleague of ours, PC Rowley. PC Rowley asked Mr. Aslan to see the refusals register, who confirmed that all instances or refusals are noted down in the register at the time as soon as the customer leaves. When the register could not be located by Mr. Aslan, he phoned Mr. Timor, who directed him to the register's location. PC Rowley noted that the register did not contain a single entry since the photos were taken of that register on the 12th of May. So between 12th of May and PC Rowley looking at the register, 5-week period, not one single entry. We also noted that the premises entries documented in the register all relate to underage refusals or challenges. Not one single entry during those times related to street drinkers, drunk persons that they've refused. So we found that interesting. As I come to the end of my presentation, Kent Police would like to cite a recent licensing hearing on the 2nd of March this year regarding Bubba Food Centre. That's the premises which is 2 doors down from Bubba Food and Wine. An application made by the same applicant for their linked premises 2 doors down. So they recognise the impact that their new premises would impose on the existing issues and made mention to the SIP and the PSPO and recognise that the High Street has a street drinker problem. For these reasons, and in order that their new premises does not negatively impact the licensing objectives, they offered various amendments and conditions to that application 2 doors away. So these included, but were not limited to, changing of their hours that they'd applied for from 5:30 in the morning to 2200, reduce that to 0900 to 2100 to minimise the impact on the SIP. They also proposed that all alcohol sales would be ancillary to a minimum of a £10 basket sale of groceries, with a view to removing low-cost transactions that were usually engaged with street drinkers. They also proposed that single bottles or cans of beer or cider would not be sold, nor the miniature 25 cl bottles of spirits. They proposed that no high-strength beers would be sold, and they mentioned 5.5 as above as being high strength. All alcoholic containers sold at the premises would be clearly marked with the name and postcode of the premises. So that was what they proposed for their new licence next door. Having considered the actions taken by Kent Police to advise the premises to promote the licensing objectives more professionally and no discernible improvements seen, we've come to the conclusion that we have no faith left in Mr. Timor and his staff moving forward. Kent Police licensing team officers, including myself, have formulated the opinion that the premises is interested only in selling alcohol to whomever will buy it at the expense of upholding the objectives. As a result, Kent Police seek revocation of the premises licence, please. Should the panel be mindful not to agree, then we would seek the addition of the following conditions. Reduction of the licensing hours to 9 to 8 in the evening, 9 to 2000 hours. No beer, lager, cider or spirit mixers above 5.5% ABV to be supplied. No single sales of beer, lager, cider or 25 cl spirit bottles. Only purchases of 4 items or more will be permitted. Outside of the authorised sale of alcohol, all alcohol within the trading area is to be secured behind locked grills, screens or cabinet doors, as the premises is a 24-hour shop. Removal of the DPS. A clear glazing policy for the window in front of the premises shall be kept above 1 metre and below 2 metres measured from the shop floor, so that the staff have an unobstructed view of the area immediately outside of and in front of the premises. The expectation is this being any display or notice required by law and any required as a condition of the licence. The exception to this is any legal document having to be posted on the window. Also, branded carrier bags when alcohol is provided. And that is what we request. We have those 2 bits of footage to show. Thanks, Dan. Those 2 bits of footage to show which would not be appropriate in public.
I'd like to move that we exclude the press and public so we can review those. Thank you.
obviously be speaking on behalf of the Director of Public Health. Would you prefer to question the police first, or would you prefer that Mrs. Murray makes her points and then you can question? Which would you prefer?
It's very kind of you to give me the offer. If I can tell you that the way I regard these hearings, I never regard them as though they're trials.
No.
With questions and cross-examinations. So in maybe a tenth of a percent of cases, I might even have a question. In this case, I've got no questions, but I will respond to what the officer has had to say. So I'm very happy for Mrs. Murray to talk next.
Okay.
I won't have any questions for her either,
Okay.
and then I'll make my address.
Okay, Mrs.
Thank you, Chair. These representations are intended to give the Licensing Committee an enhanced understanding of the issues in this area and the current evidence to support the concerns that the Director of Public Health has regarding the events outlined in the police review. As you're aware, there is a general problem in the High Street area with street drinking, intimidating and antisocial behaviour, and associated litter with discarded cans, bottles, and other associated litter in alleyways and public areas. I've attended the Gillingham High Street area on several occasions between June 2021 up to March 2022 for the purposes of this review, and there is ongoing evidence of alcohol-related street drinking and associated litter in and around the High Street. This consists of bottles and cans of beer and cider, both super strength and regular strength, and bottles of spirits, as well as plastic and cardboard wrappings, bottle tops and other associated litter. Areas where the litter was found, in particular concentrations, were the alleyways off of Balmoral Road and Duncan Road, Balmoral Gardens, the alleyways between the High Street and Fox Street, along Jeffrey Street, but particularly in the communal gardens to the flats in Jeffrey Street at its junction with Skinner Street, and by the public car park and alleyways off Green Street, and in the flower beds around St Mark's Church, which is of particular relevance to this review application. Discarded bottles and cans can be seen everywhere thrown into the gutter, front gardens and on footpaths, and examples of the type of litter in the areas closest to the premises have been included in Annex 1, which is part of the agenda. The photographs show much of the litter consists of single cans and bottles, but taken in totality, there is a large quantity of it in this area, and over the period of time that the evidence was collected, this litter is ongoing and consistent. The area to the front and side of St Mark's Church, which is directly next to the premises, is particularly bad for alcohol litter, and as can be seen from the photographs, it is often found in and under the bushes in significant quantities, but also around the benches to the front of the premises. I have witnessed people engaging in public drinking in the High Street, in Green Street and in Balmoral Gardens, in Jeffrey Street, and again of particular relevance to this application on the benches by St Mark's Church, which tallies with the alcohol litter that I see in the area. I can confirm that on the 22nd of March this year, I was in the High Street by St Mark's Church photographing the alcohol litter when I saw a male who was carrying the open mixer can of Captain Morgan rum and coke, which you've already seen. He was unsteady on his feet, and I formed the opinion that he was drunk. And he walked into Baba's carrying the open can. I didn't go in, but when he came out, he drank a small 25 centilitre bottle of vodka while he was sitting next to the lady, which you have already seen. And when he finished drinking the vodka, he dropped the empty bottle on the floor and walked up off the road. He actually left the empty can of rum and coke at the side of the road, just on the other side of the High Street. On occasions, there is also a very strong smell of urine and evidence of public defecation in the flower bed bordering St Mark's Church in Canterbury Street, and in the past I've also seen drug paraphernalia discarded in this area as well. Thank you.
You've said that you don't wish to question them, so I'll ask my colleagues if they have any questions for the police.
Thank you, Chair. Could you, do you know of any other licensed premises around the area, so within 2 minutes walk, and their licensing hours? Of the, you know, St Mark's Church?
Please don't, I'm hoping this figure is accurate, but I remember doing a review hearing recently, and I'm sure I was quoted something along the lines of 17 off-licence type premises within the immediate area of Gillingham High Street, so roughly that many. With regards to their operating hours, my understanding is they're all closed before midnight. This would be the only 24-hour off-licence that I know of in the immediate area. Does that answer your question?
Another question, just, and again, it's you probably won't know the exact answer, but a street drinker, how much do they normally spend a day on alcohol? I mean, I know it must vary between each street drinker, but I'm just trying to get a picture in my head of sort of how much they contribute towards this business, whether it's a lot of their turnover or a small amount of their turnover.
Again, it's a really very difficult question to answer, if I'm honest. It's guesswork. I'm going to estimate most cans of lager or cider can range anywhere between £1 and £2. And most bottles of, for example, a Frosty Jack cider could be £2 to £3. Again, that's just a guess. And I'd also be guessing to say that some people may just drink 1 or 2. Some may drink way in excess of 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. It's an impossible question to answer, really, but I hope that helps.
I do understand. I was just trying to get a picture in my head of, you know, and how many street drinkers do we think we have in Gillingham, roughly? Any idea?
No. No, councillor. I would like to say about dependent drinkers. There are dependent drinkers who will be drinking 40, 50, 60, 70 units of alcohol a day. That is not unusual. So you can be talking about 4 or 5 large bottles of Frosty Jacks a day. That is not unusual.
Can I just ask you a little bit about the engagement of the police with the premises in seeking to regularise the behaviour to try to make this premises be able to work? How was it undertaken and how often did it happen?
I'm new to the team, but I recall having a conversation with the DPS, Mr. Tima. When I first met him, I went up as a cursory visit just to go and introduce myself to a new DPS. He was new at the time. He said his experience was vast. And I reminded him, please don't sell to drunk people. We have a problem here. And he assured me that that's not what he was there to do. Each time we went and advised that we'd caught street drinkers, we'd asked, again, you're selling to street drinkers. These people are drinking. It became a little bit along the lines of him denying that they were selling to street drinkers, assured us that that's not something that the shop does. His staff would not do it. So it was just general chit-chats. When we went to go and pick up CCTV, we'd remind them, or when we went to go and deliver the first paperwork, we'd then have a chat again to remind him that the reason why we were doing it. But before the submission, there were 4 or 5 times that we can have noted down on our notes at work that we've had advised him, and eventually a little bit of a warning in relation to the street drinkers and the fact that his premises was directly responsible for a large proportion of them. So he was under no illusion that that's what we were looking at.
Can I get you to put your microphone?
I constantly forget.
You may need to pull it slightly towards you.
It's equivalent to saying you're on mute. Here I am. I hope that's audible now. As you know, and you've been advised, you've got a range of powers. And the range is set out at page 8 of your agenda papers. It makes it clear at 3.1 and 3.2, you can just warn a premises of their conduct. You can then intervene by modifying conditions. You can take away a licensable activity. You can remove the DPS. And you could suspend the license. And then you can revoke the license. Now, this is a first review of this licensed premises. And the police have asked you to go straight to the most draconian remedy, which is revocation. Now, you've been advised about what your powers are. It might help you just to know what approach national guidance asks you to take when exercising your powers. This is set out in paragraph 11.20 of national guidance, which says that in deciding which of these powers to invoke, it's expected that licensing authorities should, so far as possible, seek to establish the cause or causes of the concerns that the representations identify. The remedial action should generally be directed at these causes and should always be no more than an appropriate and proportionate response to address the cause or concerns that instigated the review. Now, from that, we get two very important principles. The first is, this is a problem-solving exercise. You work out what the issue is and seek to solve that issue. And secondly, and crucially, this is not a penal or punitive system. It's not the same approach you'd be taking if you were sitting as a local magistrate or as a judge. It is designed to find the appropriate level or the appropriate balance to take the proportionate measure, which helps to promote the licensing objectives. And proportionate sometimes finds synonyms. You do what's reasonable, you do what's balanced, you don't do more than is appropriate. And in particular in this case, when this is the first time that my client has been subjected to a formal process of this sort. And so, reflecting that approach, I'm going to deal firstly with the history of these premises and the steps which have already been taken by my client to promote the licensing objectives, none of which you've heard about so far. And then I'm going to propose a disposal of this case, which is far-reaching, but which is also fair and proportionate, and which we say properly meets the concerns which have been expressed. And at least some of those concerns are fairly expressed. And I shall be submitting that in the light of the history, and particularly that this is a first review of this premises licence, revocation would be a disproportionate sanction on this occasion. Now, clearly, listening to the submissions which have been made, both by PC Smuts and by Mrs. Murray, there are social issues around Gillingham town centre, and I imagine you don't need me to tell you about those. You probably don't need the officers to tell you about those either. But there are issues around Gillingham town centre, it seems from Mrs. Murray's representations, around the town centre as a whole. And I hope you don't regard it as patronising, but in my submissions I do just want to try and get a little bit more of an overview of what these issues are, and the way in which sometimes these issues can be addressed without the necessity to go through the town centre and remove licences from premises. I'm hoping that what I say will be helpful to you. Now, a little bit of history. Mr. Ali Aslan, sits at the end here, purchased this business just over 4 years ago. I don't know whether you've walked past it, I imagine you may well have done. It's a small supermarket or a large convenience store. It sits probably between the two, of a type you'll be very familiar with fruit and vegetables cascading out of the front, with a full range of refrigerated and dry goods and alcohol indoors. This isn't just a booze buster or something like that. It is selling a full range of convenience products to the people who are living and working in Gillingham town centre. And it is providing a valuable local service over all of its hours of trade, which are 24 hours, and it provides employment to 12 people. During the pandemic, it's in our papers, it was very important for blue light workers, emergency workers, but through the week it's important for shift workers and those people who utilise high streets at night. Now, Mr. Aslan's operation of these premises, I'm talking now from early 2018 to late 2021, was beyond reproach. There were no reviews, there were no threatened reviews, there were no warnings, there were no formal meetings with the authorities to discuss issues with the operation. As far as Mr. Aslan was concerned, he was a perfectly well-functioning business providing a service to local people 24 hours a day. Mr. Aslan, he instructs me, always worked with the police, assisted them with their inquiries, and which in some cases have enabled individuals to be brought to justice because they've got a full-service CCTV system. And you'll be aware from your general knowledge as citizens, but also as councillors, not everybody in Gillingham town centre is an angel. I mean, like all town centres, there are some ne'er-do-well individuals who do create problems. But Mr. Aslan has always worked with the police to try to bring people to justice. And it's interesting looking at the review papers in this case, as someone who does a lot of this work on all sides of the question, in this case, the police have levelled no allegations at these premises at all until 1 a.m. on the 1st of January of 2022. And that is 3 years and 10 months after Mr. Aslan purchased this business. And that, I hope you find, is a highly relevant fact. However, sadly, by that date, Mr. Aslan was a very unwell man. I won't go into what his medical issues are. You get a flavour of it from your papers. But if I can say to you, he could barely walk, let alone work. You'll begin to get a flavour of it. And he felt that he couldn't handle this business by himself. He was thinking of selling it. But then he was approached by Mr. Timur to go into partnership with him. Mr. Timur is a Swedish citizen, a businessman who moved to this country, I think, 4 years ago. Sorry? 2018, 4 years ago. And before he moved to the UK, he was a local councillor in Sweden, dealing with neighbourhood renewal and regeneration. He paid a lot of money to go into partnership with Mr. Aslan, knowing amongst other things that this is a 24-hour business, he'd seen the books and so forth. So he paid out a lot of his personal money. They registered a company together. The company takes the first 2 or 3 letters of each of their 2 names. That's why the licensee is called what the licensee is called. And then on the 18th of October of 2021, they transferred the premises licence into the name of the company, Tem As Limited, and then trade continued. And then, on the 9th of January, right at the beginning of the episodes which are relied on by the police, Mr. Aslan left this country for Turkey in order to go and have a serious operation in Turkey, from which he is still recovering. He did not return to this country until the 15th of March, by which time this review had already started. So he missed, I'm not being flippant, all the exciting events in this case, which preceded the beginning of this review. I don't know if it's relevant, but it's worth mentioning that Mr. Aslan lives right opposite the premises, and therefore has got a permanent eye. He's either there or he's looking down on the premises. And it may be a feature of this case that over the period that PC Smuts is concerned about, that Mr. Aslan just wasn't there. He was in Turkey. But now he's back. He's working himself back towards health. And in the not too distant future, he hopes to resume the reins in partnership with Mr. Timur. They also run together another premises, which is a few doors down, which doesn't have a licence for the reasons which Mr. Smuts has been mentioning. Now, in common with a number of towns, there is a cohort of street drinkers in your town. It's not a disgrace, it's not a shame, it's a fact, and it's a fact of life. As far as we know from asking questions, it's a cohort of just over 30 or so street drinkers. Now, I don't want to minimise that. It is a difficulty for authorities when there are street drinkers for the reasons Mrs. Murray has given. It comes with other social issues. For the reasons that PC Smuts has mentioned, you end up with low-level disorder of the sort that we've seen. You end up with littering and urination and defecation, and none of that is nice. And the authorities, of course, quite properly, in performance of their public duties, want to try to deal with it. Partly in response to the issue of street drinking, Medway has made a public space protection order, a PSPO. It's perhaps pertinent to mention that the legal effect of a PSPO is correctly stated by Medway on its website. It is sometimes misunderstood by members of the public what a PSPO actually does. I'm just going to read you what you say about it, which is correct. The order does not mean a blanket ban on drinking in public, but it does mean that a police officer, PCSO, or authorised council officer can prevent you drinking alcohol if you're behaving antisocially. They also have power to confiscate and dispose of your alcohol and fine you, and if you fail to comply with the direction, you can be arrested. In response to the awful scenes at Wembley last year at the Euros, Brent made a PSPO, and now as you come up Wembley Way, your alcohol is taken off you and thrown in a bin. But the order, to really be effective, depends on the police or local authority requiring individuals to stop drinking and then taking action if they do not. One of the reasons I understand the police don't fine people is they haven't got the means to pay fines, but they can confiscate, and Medway can confiscate as well. Now, I'm not criticising, this is times of financial duress on all public authorities, but it's not clear from anything that you've heard in this case or from any of the CCTV that these powers are in fact being exercised on a consistent daily basis by the police, let alone Medway Council. We've just heard no evidence on the point at all. And the result of that is that this measure which has been put in place here is that sometimes then the blame is thrown onto licensees. Now, let's just think about licensees. Can I contextualise this issue? We've heard about snippets. I can give you a snippet. My client does not now sell Frosty Jack. I was pleased to hear Mrs. Murray talk about Frosty Jack. Frosty Jack is the preferred tipple of the street drinker. Why is that? Because Frosty Jack has two attributes. One, it is disgustingly strong, 7.5%. Two, it's disgustingly cheap. In a nationally franchised shop, about 90 seconds walk from my client's front door this morning, you can buy a 2.5 litre bottle, that's just over 4 pints, of Frosty Jacks for £4.69. So that's about £1.80 a litre, or £1 a pint. That bottle contains 17 units of alcohol, in reference to Councillor Hackwell's question, 17 units. And that means that the price per unit is about 27p. Scotland, to reduce harms amongst catastrophic drinkers, including street drinkers, introduced a minimum price some years ago of 50p. And here in Gillingham, you can buy Frosty Jacks for half of that minimum unit price. My client doesn't sell it, but in a 10-minute walk, 5 premises in all directions from my client's premises, 5 premises this morning were selling large quantities of Frosty Jacks. So this is not just my client. Premises across Gillingham are selling products attractive to street drinkers. And that's why when Mrs. Murray's talking to you, she's saying you can find litter in all these streets around Gillingham town centre. One of them is in front of my client's premises and in the church next door, where sometimes people sleep. There's tents. You saw a picture there of a lady sleeping under a white cover. They're defecating in the bushes and so forth. That is what happens when PSPOs are not enforced. Now, what do you do about this? So far as licensees are concerned, it's not against the law to sell alcohol to street drinkers. It's sometimes a mistake. It's a mistake which has been made in this case. It's not against the law to sell alcohol even to street drinkers. In some areas, working well, partnerships are formed so that the police, other authorities, sometimes residents, sometimes care agencies and licensed premises work together to try to solve this issue collectively. So police will enforce the PSPO, commercial venues like my clients adjust their commercial practices and lower their expectations of being able to sell to such individuals, both what they sell and to whom they sell and how they sell. Hangout spots are modified to discourage drinking, so benches are removed from particularly sensitive places, or fences are put around places sometimes where people gather. Local support agencies import their invaluable expertise. In short, that's a partnership approach. Licensed premises have to take the hit, but they do so collectively so as to help clean up town centres. Now, that could happen, and with the very greatest respect, should happen. There's clearly been efforts, but maybe there needs to be continuing ones. Now, that is not a criticism of Medway Council, which understands there's an issue and has reflected as much in the PSPO. But the lack of a partnership approach mean that individual venues are basically working to their licenses. If you go into any of those shops in Gillingham Town Centre, you say, why are you selling Frosty Jacks? Or the other products which are being sold, the Super Skulls, the Kestrels, and so forth, that are all visible out there today, 5-minute drive from here, 10-minute walk. They will all say to you, we're working to our license. And my client's license says nothing about street drinking. It says nothing about high-strength alcohol. Whether it should say something about that, I will come to. Now then, let's come to the history. As I say, nothing from March 18, when Mr. Aslan buys, to December 21. Very early January, off he goes, and now the police issues kick in. They rely on incidents, initially, dated the 1st of January, the 1st of February, the 3rd of February, the 3rd of February again, and the 5th of February. 4 of those incidents was simply sales of alcohol to people who then went on and drank them in the street. Seen the video? They didn't appear drunk in the shop. They weren't wobbling around. They weren't being disorderly. They came in, bought a product, and went out again. They could have brought the products which they bought from anywhere. You've no evidence even whether they were high-strength products or not. So my client was just utilising its licence to make sales. The 5th was disorderly conduct by a customer when the premises staff called the police. clearly not believing they had done anything wrong. Indeed, they probably thought they were doing the right thing when this man who was now putting his shoulder to the door was being a pest, actually. And then he kicked the door of the emergency vehicle and so forth. He's a street pest. And what that proves is there's some not very nice people hanging around Gillingham. But it's not right to say, you've seen the circumstances of the sale, he wasn't being disorderly in any sort of criminal sense before that sale was made. The sale was made, then later on he went on to be disorderly. My client called the police. Now, in response to your question, Councillor, with the greatest respect, it was absolutely the right question. What is the engagement that you've had prior to this review? The only time prior to this review that the police spoke to a director, or the DPS, who is a director, about these incidents was 17th of February, once. And when PC Smuts was asked about it a bit more, he used two words which resonated with me. And they're not words you'll hear at the College of Policing when they're talking about partnership work or action planning. He said they had a chit-chat and they had a cursory chat, standing up in the middle of the working day in the shop. Can I contrast this? I'm not trying to criticise, I'm just trying to explain how we're here. This was not a formal meeting at the police station with an agenda, with the attendance of a senior uniformed officer, with a record of the meeting, with an agreed action plan, with a review in default of performance of the matters on the agreed action plan, and so forth, which does represent common practice in matters of this nature. It was an impromptu conversation which resulted in no follow-up letter saying what the expectations were and no formal warning. The meeting at the police station, which is important, it's an important part of a stepped approach, is sometimes called a meeting without biscuits. It explains this is a formal exercise. You are now formally under watch. You do these things. We're agreeing them. We're both signing this. If you don't, we will then be seeing you at review. It's not clear why that process wasn't followed. It's common process. But what it does do is it helps all parties to understand the problem in the round and helps them to a meeting of minds. Now, following the 5th of February and the 17th of February chit-chat, there were then further examples of sales on the 19th and 25th of February, which we've seen, and then on 1st of March, 12 days after that chit-chat, the police started an application for review in which they proposed the most serious sanction which lies within your power to impose. Now, what that isn't, with respect, is a stepped approach. The stepped approach should continue through the police action, informal warning, formal warning, action plan, and so forth. And then you can take a stepped approach as well, which is essentially what I'm asking you today. Now, that review having commenced, Mr. Aslan came back to this country on the 15th of March, having undergone his serious operation, and he has continued his recovery in the UK, and he played no role in the events which precipitated this review. Mr. Timur, Mr. Aslan being extremely ill, Mr. Timur was reluctant at first to burden him with what was going on, but upon Mr. Aslan's return, they have now had time jointly to consider the position and take advice on it, and they have acted on the concerns of the police, and they propose to act further. Now, I don't just want to gloss over the conversation of the 17th of February. I'm not sure that Mr. Timur, in hindsight, would say he'd covered himself in glory. It clearly wasn't a conversation which went terribly well, for which on Mr. Teemer's behalf I apologise, but it was one of those things. It was in the middle of a working day, the police were making a demand, Mr. Teemer reacted, and here we are. But my client has had the opportunity to discuss at director level what should be done. They've had the opportunity to discuss the matter with Mr. Kilic, who's a licensing agent, who represents quite a number of members of the Turkish community, and in more recent days he's had the opportunity to discuss matters with me, and I've thought of some conditions which I know are sometimes imposed in cases of this nature elsewhere, and I will get to those. Can I start with what my client has already done to try and make things better? Progressively, since the end of February of 2022, my client has stopped stocking high-strength alcohol. So starting with the obvious things, such as in beer, Special Brew, Kestrel and Super Skull, and in ciders, products such as Frosty Jacks, Omega, HCC, Lambrini and K-cider, but I asked for a list of everything that they'd stopped stocking, and I was given that list. It's a long list of the products where they've stopped stocking. For what it's worth, I've looked at their shelves this morning. They have no beer, lager or cider over 5.5%, which is the magic number. All the products which are favoured by the street drinking community, they have gone. Secondly, they've signed up an agreement with St. Peter's College for all of their training needs. All of their staff have now undergone personal licensing qualifications, which include obviously things like the licensing objectives, underage sales, refusals, and so forth. And all of them have gone underage sale training, specific underage sale training, Challenge 25 and all of those sorts of things. And all of them will be undertaking health and safety courses and first aid courses. So you would have the assurance, this license survived, that all of the staff will be trained in all relevant matters. Thirdly, they have ordered price tags with their business name on them so that the authorities will be able to identify if my client is sold to street drinkers just by looking at what's discarded or what they confiscate or what they see in street drinkers' hands. Fourthly, they have also ordered branded shop carrier bags for alcohol sales, as the police have suggested. Fifthly, in May, there were incidents which it was plain that the person purchasing was a street drinker. And the result of that, my client has forbidden that, the result of that was sad for them, but important for my client. The two individuals concerned, who were father and son, have been dismissed for gross misconduct, and the P45s are in the bundle. Sixthly, they've spoken to the church to offer to fence the churchyard to prevent street drinkers using the yard to pitch tents and as a latrine. Seventhly, they are actively trying to persuade drinkers to move on from the conveniently placed benches in front of and to the side of the premises. Eighthly, in their evidence, they've offered to help organise a fund in helping to provide accommodation for homeless street drinkers within Gillingham. Now, points 6 to 8 are either new or they haven't been taken up or may never be taken up, but they do at least show that my client does want to be part of the solution and is perfectly sincere about it. All 8 points show that my client is alive to the problem and no doubt, being totally frank about it, in part as a result of this police action, has sought to respond in an appropriate manner. Can I add to that, on the credit side of the balance, in December, at the request of Medway's street trading manager, there was as I've said, there's fruit and vegetables coming out of the premises. And if you can imagine it coming out in a sort of U, on one side of it, one of the wings was quite high, and that meant the council CCTV couldn't see beyond the shelving. And so my client has taken away 2 feet of shelving so as to improve surveillance within the town centre in the vicinity of its premises. Now, this review provides the opportunity to build on that progress and put in place proportionate conditions which are legally binding, woe betide the licensee that breaches them, both because it will be back here on revocation and because they can be prosecuted, to ensure that my client plays its part in helping to address this social problem. And I'm going to suggest 8 proportionate conditions, and I'm going to just discuss some others once I've done that. 1, no super strength beer, lagers or ciders above 5.5% ABV shall be sold at the premises. So just a straight prohibition. 2, no alcohol products shall be advertised on the premises frontage or on A-boards. 3, there is a CCTV condition on the licence already, it's condition 5, but we would propose adding the CCTV system shall cover the area immediately outside and to the front of the premises, and also a CCTV monitor shall be maintained to enable CCTV images to be viewed from the counter. And that means that, as the police have already found, my client's not hiding anything. If anything happens or they want to see whether my client is complying with the licence, they've got a complete view on my client's CCTV. Fortunately, there's also very good council CCTV at the end of the street as well. 4, all alcohol displays shall be positioned so as to be visible from the counter, so my client is not able to say, well, I couldn't see what was going on around the corner. Everything's got to be visible. 5, all alcohol products shall be labelled with the name of the premises. That's for the reasons which I've discussed. 6, all alcohol products sold shall be placed in bags carrying the name of the premises, which the police have asked for. 7, importantly, no alcohol shall be sold to known street drinkers or to other persons notified to the premises by the police. Now, the street drinkers is not a vast community. It's a slightly peripatetic community. Some will come in and come out again. But on the whole, they are known to the retailers, and it will be an offence for my client to sell to any of them. But then there may be others who the police say, we don't want you selling to this person. There were some examples there of some quite nice-looking gentlemen coming in, buying alcohol. Maybe the police take the view, no, they shouldn't. We know something about this person. You're not to sell to that person. This is a condition applied elsewhere. It works. The premises know that it's forbidden, and so they don't. And 8, a notice shall be displayed on the exterior of the premises stating that alcohol purchased may not be consumed in the street and that service will be refused if staff have reason to suspect that it will be purchased for such consumption. I'm actually, as I'm talking, thinking that you would commonly put that along with another condition, and I would propose it actually, which says on the outside of the premises, CCTV operates within these premises. So that's making a statement to people, we're not selling to you if you're a street drinker and you're under surveillance. Now that set of standards represents a concerted approach at premises level to deal with an intractable street drinking issue. And I do hope that you think that those are reasonably well considered and helpful suggestions. However, as I've said, there are many, many premises in Gillingham town centre selling alcohol, and on a sample of 5 this morning, 5 selling exactly the kind of alcohol that my client is not stocking and is promising not to stock. One of the benefits of attaching conditions of this nature to PC SMUTs, and indeed also to your licensing officers, is that similar conditions can then be discussed with other premises, so that this review has the salutary effect of raising standards throughout the centre of Gillingham. In short, the police are able to say the premises with the best standards of operation in Gillingham now is Baba. Will you adopt those standards? And if not, they can be brought in for review. If they will, they can apply by minor variation to put the standards on their licences. If you do not take a concerted approach like that, the commercial benefit of selling high-strength alcohol will just move from premises to premises. This is not theatre, but my client said this morning that every morning they sweep up outside the premises the churchyard, so mostly the churchyard on one side and the benches on the other. And I just thought I'd bring along, there was a lot of stuff, but I just thought I'd bring along the high-strength stuff. Here's an 8.5% Belgian product called OJ's. This is De Baun, which is 7%. This is Okosim, which is 6.5%. And this is Kestrel at 9%. None of this is from my client. So that's what's going on in your town centre. And what my client is proposing is to be the best performing premises in terms of not selling this kind of, shall we call it toxin, when you're selling 9% beer? My client is proposing to be the best premises with the best standards operational in Gillingham to try to chip away with that problem. And if all the premises in Gillingham town centre operated those conditions, and if the PSPO is enforced, and then if agencies are working to try to help street drinkers, which I'm sure they are already, you might begin to chip away at this issue. But there does need to be a partnership approach to deal with this issue. Now, this review is a salutary one. If there hadn't been a review, you wouldn't be able to eyeball my client and you wouldn't get a barrister here proposing conditions to you. It enables appropriate interventions to be made. As you're aware, it's not a penal process. You're not here to punish Mr. Teamer because Mr. Smuts did not think him sufficiently cooperative in their chit-chat. But as you can see, from this thorough set of conditions I'm now proposing, my client is taking this process extremely seriously and is proposing a solution which involves playing a full role in promoting the licensing objectives locally. It will produce an economic hit, since it removes a cohort of customers. I can't answer Councillor Hackwell's question directly what that's worth, but it's worth something. And also a segment of the alcohol products to be sold. And that you may consider is proportionate, but we submit it would be unfair and disproportionate to remove the right to sell alcohol at all in this general convenience store. And I do hope very much it does not come to that. Now, can I then just deal with some other matters which have been raised this morning? There was an anonymous statement, which I think is dated the 13th of May, but was sent by link yesterday. I'm not quite sure why that is. And I saw it for the first time, as you saw at the beginning of the hearing. It's a difficult one, this, because it's anonymous. My client says if these people live above, there's 2 statements. They are people who have been banned from the premises and in one case asked for jobs and weren't given them. And they're saying there are problems at night, which was not part of the original review. It was about street drinkers. It wasn't a nighttime disturbance case. I've asked Mr. Aslan if there's serious disturbance at night outside these premises, in the middle of the night, people woken and so forth. He does, after all, live opposite. He says not to his knowledge. People pop in, they get something and they come out again. You have no observations from the environmental health officer, who would normally be considering matters of noise at night. You have no corroborative evidence. You have no direct police evidence about these topics. You have no town centre CCTV showing that parties are going on there in the middle of the night, and the police themselves haven't been out at the middle of the night discovering parties. So what are we to make of that? I would respectfully submit that if there's to be complaints which result in something about parties in the middle of the night, that would be a question of another review. It's not something we can possibly deal with here. We haven't even got the makers of these statements here so that you could ask them questions, let alone me. So there's basically an absence of evidence supporting this material. It is an insufficient basis on which to cut back the hours of this business. But if these problems continue, no doubt evidence will be gathered, and that would be a question for another day. This is a valuable business for Gillingham Town Centre. It's a 24-hour business. It's providing a range of products to local people, providing a local service throughout the night, and it would like to have the ability to continue to do so. And we would say it's disproportionate, based on this late-served and anonymous evidence, to remove that ability. But I do hope that the conditions which we are offering will help to deal with that issue. Mr. Smuts, PC Smuts, I apologise, mentioned a couple of things which are not strictly relevant before you. Don't want to have an argument about it, but I fully appreciate this as a cumulative impact area, but paragraph 14.45 of national guidance tells you that this is not relevant to reviews. You're not here to consider the cumulative impact area and its consequences, which impinges on applications, not reviews. You're here to find out whether you should take away someone's licence. It's not a proper basis to do so, that it happens to be a CIA. That's what national guidance says. And secondly, you refused a licence for nearby premises, my clients, as it happens, based on the cumulative impact policy. Well, that was an application of the policy. It's not relevant to an application to revoke an existing licence, and so I say nothing more about it. Can I just finish by looking at some further conditions which have come up in discussion? The police have asked, if you weren't to revoke, for a condition that there shouldn't be single sales of single bottles. The difficulty with that in a town of limited means is if you do start applying that across the board, you punish people of limited means, which in the middle of a cost of living crisis does not seem a very good idea. I accept that some of the very large chains will loss lead on their alcohol, so can start selling, 24s and 4s and 8s and so forth at pretty much a discounted product. But in a town centre which is not particularly wealthy, to say to people who want to pick up a can of something to go with their dinner, no, you can't, it's probably not necessary in this case. So far as hours are concerned, I have already dealt with this. It would be a different question if you felt that hours should be pegged back. I think there's been one or two instances of disorder later on in the night. I think you'd need to look at that over a 4-year period rather than one or two incidents. But there's been a very few instances later at night. If you did want to peg it back, we would submit that the licence hours would then be something like 6 in the morning till 2 the next morning. But we do say it would be, with respect, just unfair to start removing licensed hours. The other powers that you've got, there's also a request that my client clear the window. That's not actually necessary because my client has got full CCTV coverage outside and you're going to condition that. The difficulty with clearing the window is that's where most of the fruit and vegetable products are, and you'll be removing that service. You do have the ability to remove the DPS. My client's got a lot of personal licensees. I suppose any of them could be the DPS, but it does seem to make sense that a senior person should remain as the DPS. You've also got the ability, I'm not advocating this, but just letting you know, that one of your powers is to suspend And what national guidance says is, so for instance, a licence could be suspended for a weekend as a means of deterring the holder from allowing the problems that gave rise to the review to happen again. So you do have that power to impose a really short suspension, just to wag your finger and say next time it won't be as easy as this. So you do have that power, and I'm just drawing that to your attention, but not obviously requesting it. I hope, however, you can see that we are trying to take a constructive approach to this, and that the measures we've proposed are far-reaching by dealing directly with the points which the police have raised. I apologise if it's thought that my client has come late to the party, but that's part of what a review achieves. It brings people together and makes them focus very keenly on the issues which have been raised. I hope you feel that that is what we have done. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, my left arm is being touched. Oh yeah, so I'm also being prompted. If you felt you're still concerned about control of the premises at night, then my client would be prepared to offer an SIA supervisor from 11 p.m. until 6 a.m. to cover those nighttime hours. And that's quite a cost. It's essentially be putting a £30,000 cost on my client annually, but obviously that would be preferable to losing those hours altogether. So that is another way that you could deal with it in a proportionate way without reaching for the most draconian remedies. Thank you very much, Lee. Those are my submissions.
Thank you, Mr. Culver. Peter Smuts, do you have questions for?
We do have a few questions, if we might indulge ourselves. Dan, have you got some questions?
Yeah, I've got a few. Some I pre-scripted before we came. Some are as a result of what you've said during your presentation. So can I just confirm, please, as per your presentation, you said that as of this morning, we believe there's nothing in the shop that's under 5.5%.
Over 5.5%.
Sorry, yeah. It's
I think
nothing
that's right,
over 5.5.
Yeah.
The only reason I bring that up, Chair, is not to try and be argumentative. Myself and my colleague attended the shop, I believe, on Friday morning.
Mm-hmm.
So between Friday and now, can I please confirm that the shop no longer sells Desperados? They were at 6%. Also, there was Guinness Extra on Friday morning, which is 7.5%. And there was foreign lagers, forgive me, I don't know all the names, but they was anywhere between 5.5 and 6. So I just seek some clarity with regards to whether they've been removed.
Apparently, Desperados the stock is now finishing or finished. I think what I want to assure you is that my client is perfectly serious about the condition. If it's imposed, then and
Okay.
if you find something stray, I have to say I went along the shelves to look for the familiar over 5.5% products. I didn't find any. Okay. I did instantaneously find them when I went into all the other shops.
Like I said, that wasn't meant to be argumentative.
I don't take anything you're saying as we're all trying to deal with a problem.
It rolls into my next question, Chair, if I'm honest, is why do the premises seem to be wanting to take, if there is a understanding that those products are going to be removed for the obvious reasons we've discussed, why are we not taking it off the shelves immediately? Why are they waiting to be sold before we take it off the shelves?
Well, because it's not illegal to sell them, and they've been trying to drain their actual stock. All the other premises in Gillingham are selling them, and I haven't seen that action has been taken against them. But my client has been selling them. I can give you various dates when it ran out of stock. It hasn't been reordering that stock. And what my client is saying is that my client is proposing that a line is drawn and they're not sold henceforth. If they did, as you know, it would be a criminal offence.
Okay. My next question is just seeking some clarity with regards to these statements that you mentioned. Did you say that you only received those yesterday?
The
statements from
the
residents?
one that was put in my hand, the short type statement, I think we'd heard was sent yesterday. I saw it this morning. This one I think was sent a little while before, but I think there may have been an administrative lapse. I only saw it this morning.
Okay, I just wanted to...
I think this was sold. This was sent a little while ago.
Perhaps
but
it's not a question.
Unfortunately, I only saw it this morning.
Okay, perhaps it's not a question, but just for clarity, when we served the additional paperwork in person on Mr. Timor,
Yeah.
Those documents were provided some weeks ago.
I don't argue with you about that.
You mentioned that the statements from the residents were from persons that are banned from your shop or perhaps didn't get a job when they asked for one?
Yeah.
With respect, we haven't disclosed the names of the persons who provided the statement, so how would
Because
how
there's
would you
only
know that?
3 people who live upstairs. My client understands that they're all people...
And again, Chair, with respect, we didn't say that those statements were from people that live upstairs.
Okay. Well, my client may have made an inference because it saw the police knocking on doors and so assumed that the police were trying to find evidence. That was why my client has made that inference.
Okay. Obviously, I see from the presentation that, and the documents you've already submitted, the new staff training regime.
Yeah.
May I ask what evidence you have of your old staff training regime at the time that all these problems were in place?
We haven't put in any evidence about that. I think the condition is perhaps slightly weak and could be improved because I think the training is by the DPS and so it's not a formal exercise. What my client has done is to go to St Peter's College and say, you do it, and then we can produce formal records, and that's obviously better.
So I think my question therefore is, were the staff trained at the time of all these incidents?
Yeah.
Were all the staff members trained?
So you could actually look, you could check. Okay, so find out the answer to my question, which is what the training was.
Previously, training was done, but it was kept on writing, but we just provided it.
But who was doing it? Yeah. Okay. So it was training informally on the job by the DPS. What the benefit of training with St Peter's College is that my client gives you the password, then you can get in and see that the staff have been trained without having to, you know, go and do investigations. You can literally log in and make sure that they've all been trained. And I don't think I want to hide from you, PCM, what is being proposed here is an improvement.
Okay. With regards to the refusals book,
Yeah.
obviously you've provided refusals book from November, I believe, through to May.
Yeah.
Every one of those refusals in that book is to do with an
A minor.
underage sale.
Yeah.
So, for example, persons not being sold
Yeah.
a lager or some cigarettes because they was underage.
Yeah.
Can you explain, please, why in that 6-month period there isn't a single record of turning away a person that is drunk, or a single record of turning away a potential street drinker when,
Well,
when that's claimed to occur? The staff claim that that occurs on a regular basis, but it's not
Yeah.
documented, is my point.
I think that's because the register concerned is registered to show refusal of sales of age-restricted products to minors. That is what the register is for. And so I'm not sure that my client keeps a register. If somebody walks in drunk and is sent away, I'm not sure that my client has kept a register of that. Can I just check what the... because what we could do, it's a good question, we could condition that my client should, and then you can come in and check that my client is. Just give me half a moment. Yeah, hang on. Yeah. I think that, to be fair, the condition is wide enough. It says any refusal of the sale of alcohol. But what my client has put in place pursuant to that condition is a register in relation to age-restricted products. I think that probably this would be a good occasion to tidy up the condition so that it says refusal of sale of alcohol, including to minors or street drinkers, so that we know that they've got to have both registers.
Okay, so again, please, just so I understand it, the current condition on the licence says they have to document all refusals of alcohol.
Yeah.
So they haven't documented all refusals of alcohol.
It does appear that way. They put in place an age-restricted register. They don't seem to put in place a street drinkers register. And what I'm suggesting is it would be helpful if they did.
Okay, thank you. It's one more question in relation to that same book.
Yeah.
As Andre suggested, between November and May, I think there's roughly approximately 12.5 entries per month.
Yeah.
Myself and my colleague went to the shop on the 19th of June, and we asked to see that book again. Our intention being to see entries from the 12th of May to the 16th of June.
Yeah.
Why is it that nobody that was in the shop at the time had any knowledge as to where the book was? is my first question. And the second question is, why are there no entries in there from the 12th of May to the 16th of June, when there have been in the 6 months prior?
Yeah, no, fair question. I'll try and get an answer. It's supposed to be there, but isn't there?
It wasn't there because he was taking a photo and sending to us and he forgot to put it back. And for the entries between 12 and 16,
No one's doing the entries. Okay. All right. Well, it's not a great answer, but it's the answer I'm given.
Oh, that's fine.
Truth is good. My client took the refusals register to his office to photograph it, and then sent the photographs to Mr. Gillich, and the photographs were put in the bundle. The refusals register lay where it fell, and so it wasn't in the shop, and so the staff were not completing it, and that's why the register looks empty. So that's not, that is a breach, but that's the reason.
Okay. Moving on then from the incident book. I understand obviously that you've now dismissed 2 members of staff. They're in relation to the incidents on the 7th of May and the 11th of May. Like I say, they've been dismissed. You'll notice in the CCTV that on one of the occasions, on the 11th of May, the sale of alcohol for which one of the staff members has been dismissed was witnessed by Mr. Timor that was stood behind him at the time. So my question is, why Mr. Timor did you not step in and prevent that sale of alcohol from taking place? And why is it that this person has now been sacked as a result?
I asked about that while you were talking, and I'm not sure that the dismissal was because of selling the alcohol that you saw in the video. There was an issue in one case of a drinker coming in with open alcohol and consuming it. That was the one incident. But I'm instructed that when you watch the 11th of May incident, there wasn't disorder, there wasn't nothing around it. So Mr. Timo was there. I think you're supposing that what he was sacked for was what you saw in the video, and I'm not sure that's the case.
Okay. The only reason I asked, and forgive me, is because in Mr. Timor's statement,
Yeah.
it clearly says that they were sacked because of those 2 incidents,
Yeah.
both the 7th of May and the 11th of May. That's why I raised it as a question.
Yeah. Well, I think we can try and get to the bottom of that. Give me half a moment.
It just feels harsh to sack somebody for an incident on the 11th of May when the DPS was present at the time. That's the point I make, or the question that I make.
Yeah, he just says where they're involved with 7th of May and 11th of May incidents. What I think you're assuming that we're dealing with precisely the same moments that you've picked up on the CCTV, and I'm not sure that that is an inevitable inference. I think I can understand why you want to try and, ask these sorts of questions, but the fact is my client is taking this sort of question seriously, even to the extent of warning staff that if they breach the rules, they're going to be dismissed, and 2 of them have been dismissed.
Just picking up on something within the paperwork you've already submitted, you apportion some of the blame to the reasons the street drinkers are there to the street angels. It's in one of the statements, I believe, Mr. Timor's statement. It says
want
that
to blame the street angel.
it suggests that the reasons that street drinkers are attracted to the area is because of the presence of the
Yeah.
Gillingham Street Angels, which is
Yeah.
located nearby.
But that would be like criticising street angels or a food bank or a hostel or whatever. I wouldn't dream of doing that, and I don't think my client would either. All my client is saying is that there's features within town centres which cause street drinkers to gather. Street drinkers don't on the whole gather in fields. I mean, they're attracted to centres because there's people to beg from, there's shops to buy things from, there's benches to sit on, there's, you know this perfectly well. So I think all he's trying to say is that you can't just look at one premises and what's on its shelf. There's a whole vista within town centres which causes street drinkers to gather, and sometimes it's the weather or the geography.
Okay. Are you aware that just in relation to that then, are you aware that that premises closes at 1 o'clock in the afternoon? I can see therefore the attractant early in the morning, but once it closes at 1 o'clock, there's no longer that attractant, is the point I'm trying to make. I'm almost there, I promise. Obviously, you've stated today that you do not believe a reduction in hours is needed, and again, that's echoed in your statements and in your documentation that you've submitted. I bring you back to the application for the premises only, I think it was the 2nd of March, where Mr. Timor applied for a licence for his Bubba Food Centre 2 doors down. At that licensing hearing, forgive me, my original understanding was they was applying for 4:30 in the morning till 10 at night, 5:30 in the morning, sorry, till 10 o'clock at night, and they amended that from 9 in the morning till 9 at night, recognising there to be a street drinking problem and recognising those hours to be a problem, and they offered the reduction in hours as well as a load of proposed conditions to satisfy us and the panel that they wouldn't add to the community of impact in the area, add to the problems. I think my question is, why is it that reduction in hours is suitable when you're trying to obtain a licence, but a reduction in hours is not on the cards when you're trying to keep a licence?
Okay.
I hope that question makes sense.
Okay.
I've worded it as best as I can in my mind.
Well, read my book and you'll find out the answer to your question. The reason that it's a completely different case with respect to PC Hunt. In the one case, you're coming to the council which says we don't want any more licences. That's why we've got a cumulative impact policy. We've written a strong presumption which will be overridden only in the most exceptional cases. So the whole approach when applying for a licence in a CIP is to say we're not going to add to any harms at all with very low hours, very seated use, food and drink, waitress service, and all of those sorts of things, in an attempt to persuade the committee, because you've got the onus, that it would be appropriate to depart from their own policy as an exception. And that's why you see very far-reaching conditions of that sort proposed as part of applications. But that's not the same thing as flipping that on its head and saying when you get a review, all the conditions on the licence under review have to be pegged back to the conditions which are applied for in the application. Otherwise, take somewhere like Soho, where you've got several thousand premises, some of them trading 24 hours, some of them trading 3 or 4 in the morning. If you want to get a licence in Soho, you apply till midnight or 11 to core hours, do your best. But that's not the same as saying all the other 3,000 licences all have to come back to 11 o'clock or midnight. So I don't mean to lecture you, but I mean that's the reason. They're just completely different cases.
I have no more questions, Chair, but I'll ask Andre to see if he's got any before we...
PC Hunt's covered all mine, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. To your knowledge, how many other mini markets, supermarkets that are open 24/7 in Gillingham are there? Is there any more?
I'm told it's Asda.
Okay, then.
I mean,
I understand.
oh, I'm
It's not in
told
Gillingham
also
High
Tesco, but I can't. I'm just passing on information.
I understand, but there's nothing in Gillingham town centre itself. You're the only premises that's open 24 hours. Yeah, okay. It may be a difficult question to ask, but to answer, and I'm not prying, but I just want to get a feel of how much turnover you sell for alcohol a day compared with what contribution street drinkers would make of that? I mean, if you're any possibility of answering, you know, you sell £1,000 worth of alcohol a day, and
How much do
just
street
trying to
drinkers?
rationalise it in my mind.
I don't know why I'm trying to earwig.
Yeah.
Because I can't.
Can you speak Turkish? just
Weekday, the daily alcohol sale is between 240 to 300. Weekend,
What, so to street drinkers?
no.
Total?
Total. And the weekend, between 6 to 800 pound alcohol sale. And about 2% of that was the high strength products.
Okay, this is the information I've been given. That on weekdays, the total alcohol sales are of the order of between 240 and 300 pounds. Weekends, it's of the order of 600 to 800 pounds, and I'm told that about 2% is high strength products.
Okay, thank you. I have a further question about the refusal process. Reading the refusal book, it just said boy, girl, etc.
Yeah.
And I understand that it was for age related. I do understand that you're missing the point. But how do you convey the information of banned people? I mean, is it a written word, or is it photo? You know, is there a
If the
mugshot
police
book,
wanted to ban you, mean?
or the shop banned?
Oh, I
street?
see.
Yeah. How's that process? Because I just reading a short description of a man with a woolly hat is not going to help anybody refuse alcohol.
So if somebody kicks off and they're banned, my client has got a still, because there's full frontal identification when they walk in on CCTV. You could actually condition that, by the way. In fact, when I think about it, it's a very good condition, which I've used elsewhere. You not only have a CCTV camera at the front of the shop, but you also have a screen. So when the person walks in, they know they're being filmed. You could, and that is sometimes conditioned. But if they then misbehave and they're banned, then a still goes into the book, and other staff are informed that individual is now banned.
Okay, so the proposal is to create a book of banned people that staff can be trained.
Yeah, I mean, take this individual. I'm not sure this individual on the one who kicked the door. I'm not sure he was a street drinker. He looked like a street pest to me. He's probably got a home. He needs to be banned. But my client will have a photograph which shows who he is.
And that will be shared with all employees.
And I mean, these, you know, whether it's a pub or an adult gaming centre, more rarely a convenience store. I mean, this is just how it's done.
Okay. And does such a book exist at the moment?
No, they don't have it.
Okay. Okay, that's my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. You've answered my training question. My other question was, you're saying that you might help with railings going around the church. Have the church replied to this?
Yeah, they don't want it. They don't want it.
They don't want it?
No.
Oh, right, okay, thank
It's
you.
not, I mean, I put it in as a sort of signal of goodwill and intent. I mean, I explained that my client had actually offered that. It would make a difference, but it would also change the aspect of the church, and the church don't want it, and that's a matter for them. I have to say that, just from my personal perspective, as someone who's interested in town centres, they've got some quite unprepossessing shrubs right in front of their facade wall. If those shrubs were not there, or were lower, it would make one hell of a difference. Would you agree? Yeah.
Thank you. You've mentioned the fact that obviously the business is a 24-hour business, which is very useful for people who do shift work. And then you've gone on and elaborated that the alcohol sales during the weekday possibly come to about £300 per day,
Yeah.
and 600 at the weekends. What proportion, if you are able, of that money is taken, say, on alcohol between, say, midnight and 6 a.m?
I can ask. But it's small. Okay, all right. Well, I'm told that the main sales at night are between about 11 and 1. And sorry, the main sales at night are between about 11 and 1. And I'm imagining, I don't know, but I'm just inferring that that corresponds to when people have been out for a meal, now they're going to go home and have, continue their evening, or they've been out to the pub and likewise. Apparently after 1 o'clock, alcohol sales are very, very low.
I question that because as one of your offers, the suggestion was that you would, sorry, not you, the applicant would appoint a SIA person.
Yeah.
Would that be financially viable?
What my client would probably do in that instance, he has got 12 employees, he'd probably put one of them, or maybe two of them, through an SIA training course and have them standing there badged. So they're both supervising the store, but look like an SIA, well, will be an SIA licensed security person as well.
So how many people are actually there between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m?
Between 3 and 4. I have to say, I turned up there at 8 o'clock this morning. I was welcomed by a very surprising welcoming party. There are a lot of people. It's a busy store. There's a lot of people who are working there.
Comes round to ask if you have anything to add.
Just a little bit of pre-prepared. So based on the assumption that what Kent Police have happened upon during their day-to-day duties relating to this premises, it would not be unreasonable to assume that on the balance of probability, the known incidences reflect only the bare minimum of the scale of the issues concerned. Based solely, however, on the evidence provided in this hearing, it's quite clear that the staff have issues with which they either won't or can't deal with. The impact of street drinking and the associated crime, which can be directly linked, and I hasten to add that robbery is not a minor bit of disorder, which can be directly linked to the premises at all hours, day and night, negatively affect on the running of the premises. So this raises some questions as to how the premises is trying or able to reduce the risk as much as possible to prevent crime and disorder, to promote public safety and prevent public nuisance. I will add too that there are children who need to walk past this location who do not want to see people getting drunk, urinating against the walls, or people getting beaten up and assaulted. These are some of the same children that get woken up of an evening time by the street racers racing up and down. Kent Police are seeking revocation of the premises licence, but should the panel be of a different opinion, again, we would ask that as a bare minimum that the conditions that we've proposed are considered. Thank you.
Mr. Colvin.
You've listened very carefully and asked, if I may say so, very pertinent questions. I've set out the circumstances and the history and so forth. I'm not going to do that again. And through the questioning and through your questions, it is clear that my client has got to improve. And I don't want to shirk that. And my client hasn't come here without any management issues at all. But I hope that you take the view that my client has taken substantial steps to improve matters, is proposing measures, and those measures will convert it in one hop into the most conditioned and hopefully best performing premises in Gillingham town centre. I know you'll bear in mind that this is a first review. There's guidance in paragraphs 11.27 and 11.28 of national guidance of the sorts of cases where revocation, even on first reviews, may seriously be considered. And they're completely out of the league of this case. Things like where the premises are being used to sell and distribute drugs, or illegal firearms, or children are being groomed, or gang activity is being planned from the premises. My client is just not in that league. I hope you take the view that the steps which my client has proposed are proportionate steps. It may, if my client does not continue its good efforts, it may not be the last time my client comes before you. My client does not want to come before you again, doesn't want to pay for me to come before you again, I'm absolutely sure. But I hope you take the view that my client is taking this seriously and has proposed measures, and in leaving this case, they're measures which you could commend not just to my client, but also to premises in Gillingham, so that hopefully, working in partnership, some good efforts could be made to clear up what is clearly a proper issue for this town centre. I think that's probably all I want to say. Thank you very much indeed for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Culver. Can I just check that you have the issues that Mr. Culver has offered? You have? Yeah, okay. Fine. Well, that then concludes the hearing this morning. We have another application to follow this one, so we will be discussing what we've heard, and we will issue a decision in writing within 5 days.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much for a very courteous
Thank you.
hearing. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, good afternoon. We are here now to discuss an application for a licence for the Mute Brewery Company, Court Farm, Pilgrims Road, Rochester. We do not need to go through the initial items on here. I just need to ask you if you have this paper, which basically is a guide to how it will happen. I assume you don't. Right. Fine. Then, Mr. De Fazio, can you tell us why we're here?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Put that on. In accordance with the Licensing Act 2003, the Council has received an application for a new premises licence in respect of Moot Brew Company Limited, the address of which is Court Farm, Pilgrims Road, Upper Halling, Rochester. As set out in Part 3 of the operating schedule of the application, the applicant has applied for the sale of alcohol, and this is for on and off sales between the hours of 10 a.m. to 1800 hours in the evening, Monday through to Sunday. The application has been correctly advertised in the local press. Notices displayed at the premises for the required period. In accordance with section 9.14 of the amended guidance to the Licensing Act, there have been discussions with planning and permission was granted on the 30th of March under decision MC 220240. So this matter has been put to the licensing panel because the Council has received a representation from a member of the public and no agreements have been reached so far. The objection raised is a relevant representation and relates to public safety. And in the agenda report, the following pages are highlighted for your consideration. Appendix A, which runs from pages 49 to 72. This is the application for a new premises licence. And Appendix B, which is on page 73, contains the representation that was submitted. Thank you.
Can I just make a statement here, because you've referred to planning application? To the best of my knowledge, certainly that wasn't a committee decision, and I'm, as both Councillor Hackwell and I are members of the planning committee, we've had no input into that decision, just so that that is quite clear. Would you like to speak to your application?
Sorry, I've never used one of these before. We've just written a small statement about our business, just to provide a bit of context and just to address the comment that was made. Hopefully, the comments or the statement that we've got can address the concerns that Mr. King's made. So our brewery is a microbrewery, which is a small independently owned brewery that crafts and produces our own beer. We have a 5-barrel brewing system that produces 155 gallons or 1,240 pints of beer in one batch. Generally speaking, this is a tiny, microscopic quantity compared to macro or lager commercial breweries that you actually were just discussing a while ago. In addition to our brew system, we have 3 fermenters which can turn around every couple of weeks. Many small craft breweries are designed similarly to ours, with the focus on quality, not quantity. The fundamentals of our business are built from the ground up to promote the 4 licensing objectives. Our brewery is a destination for beer enthusiasts to learn about and experience different flavours and profiles of craft beer, not a place to simply consume alcohol. Therefore, our customer is one that is geared towards searching out premium experiences rather than excess consumption, which in itself is a hugely powerful step in preventing crime and public nuisance through the customer profile. Our team has a huge amount of training and experience in the hospitality industry, which is grounded in health and safety practices, enabling us to be well equipped to prepare ourselves to protect the public from situational and environmental harm. We have comprehensive tactics for each of the 4 licensing objectives, which are woven into the fabric of our business strategy. We understand that the individual who objected is uniquely impacted by traffic movement because of where he lives in the village. The whole Medway Valley, admittedly, is gradually getting busier because of frequent housing developments. It's true that some small businesses operate out of Court Farm, and because it is a working farm, vehicles, including larger agricultural vehicles, need to access that farm. However, the incremental traffic and required access from the containers and other small businesses is minimal in comparison to the residential and local delivery traffic in the village, which I also live in. The access road to the farm is a tarmac country road, so although more than wide enough for a signal traffic and walkers to share, I walk my dog on that same road every single day and have never felt unsafe. There are traffic calming measures in place on this piece of road, including a large giveaway section and traffic island. The council could, however, further that or offer safety to walkers on this road by reducing the speed limit or other tactics. But I think that's down to them to deal with rather than us. Our business has a very specific niche consumer type and only operates during sociable hours, so between 12 and 6. So we're confident that the premises licence will not have any impact on any quality of living or pose any danger to the public or any nuisance. We're not intended to be a pub, as we've outlined in our application and planning permission. We're a destination for beer enthusiasts, as I've mentioned. Is a home brewer teacher, and we'll be providing one-to-one sessions on how to brew beer at home. So you can see this as a site for mature adults to learn and purchase products they're enthusiastic about, rather than a place to solely consume alcohol. We also intend to offer a place to rest for dog walkers, ramblers and cyclists to grab a hot or cold refreshment over the weekend, so hopefully that's a benefit to those people that are walking or cycling around. It is inevitable that there will be a small impact on traffic, we understand that, but we hope you can see that the scale of our business is small enough that we should not have any meaningful impact on the overall traffic levels. Both myself and our brewer will be cycling to the location, being so close. And finally, we'd just like to add that the feedback from local residents and generally the community has been overwhelmingly positive. So we're hoping that adds to the application.
Thank you. Mr. King, as you have come to object, you get the opportunity to ask questions, but you will also get the opportunity to state your point of view. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, I probably won't need the microphone. I've got
It's being broadcast.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is that on? You've just stated that the track's wide enough for walkers and traffic. Well, it's not. Has anybody actually gone to look at this track? Because I live literally on the track, and you've stated you've had no danger there. Well, in the last 3 weeks, I've witnessed 3 very close calls, one of them with me and my dog. So I frankly quite disagree with that, to be honest. I haven't prepared anything because I just thought I was here just to ask questions, really. You're saying that the people who are going to come to your brewery place will be more mature people, which I totally agree with, which, in my opinion, would probably drive there because it's very hilly where we live, and older people probably wouldn't be walking there. I walk it and it totally does me in. So I would suggest that these people will be driving there, sampling beers and then driving back. Don't know that for a fact, but I'm just sort of guessing. What else can I think? The farm traffic is large farm vehicles, articulated lorries. There are 3 HGVs stationed at the farm that drive in and out all day long, delivering and whatnot they do. They're grab lorries and hire-ab lorries. There's over 30 containers there that are let out. So there's lots and lots and lots of traffic going in and out of this farm every day. There's a bakery, there's a farm shop. There's also, I don't know, there's at least 20 small businesses running from these containers. So my concern is, I've got no thing with a brewery, I quite like a drink myself. My problem with it is the traffic that's already there, not the extra traffic that these guys are going to cause. I mean, I live literally there, and I didn't realise, but if I'd have given you a CCTV thing of my camera, you'd see it's just continuous, and it starts at 4 o'clock in the morning and finishes at whatever time at night. There's an Arctic lorry that I saw, I think it's on Wednesdays. I spoke to the driver, and he said on our ticket it says we can deliver any time from 4 a.m. in the morning till whenever at night. You know, that's where I live. There's loads of kids live on the green where I live. There's a couple of autistic kids that really aren't good with traffic, and it's just busy, busy, busy all the time. And that's my concern. It's not the fact that there's a brewery, it's the fact that you're adding that extra traffic and the fact of the alcohol. That's my concerns. That's why I'm here today.
Thank you, Chair. The hours of operation you've applied for are 10 till 6, so that it's not going to be an evening operation. I mean, at all. I mean, I recently visited one that was, and it was quite enjoyable actually, but that's a different issue. What other businesses? I mean, you mentioned there's we've heard mention there's a farm shop and there's a bakery, and so how many other businesses exactly are in the farm?
As you mentioned, there's the only public operating businesses are the bakery. There's a farm shop. There's also a mechanic who works on lawnmowers in a building there as well. The rest of them are private businesses that are accessed through a slightly different entrance. That's where the containers are that Duncan mentioned there. I don't know how many businesses operate there or how many people rent those. I personally rent one as well. Some of our kit is in there, but I haven't seen that stuff in 3 months. But they're rented by private individuals or businesses, but I couldn't comment on how many there are. I just know that the public ones that work out of the actual court farm courtyard, which is those three. Three? Three. Yeah.
Okay. How many visitors per day are you expecting to the tap room or to the brewery experience, or you've probably got a business plan to make sure it's worth doing. How many are you expecting a day?
So we would expect walkers, cyclists and some local residents to frequent the tap room. I mean, during the week, Monday to Thursday, we would expect maybe 20 to 30 visitors. Maybe on a weekend, a lot of that traffic will come from the butchers, the bakers, the florists that are already there. So I would imagine they'll be visiting us as a part of their visit to those other businesses already. So they'll already be part of the traffic that's coming there. So not necessarily adding to the traffic. We're also going to be offering experiences at the weekend where customers could come along and brew a beer with us. Come and see the farm where the wheat and the barley grows and things like that, so we create an experience, and that will be parties of probably maximum of 10, I would say, for that, so not a huge number of customers coming for that as well. Okay,
and you mentioned obviously push bike riders won't be bringing their cars, but walkers and dog walkers. Is there passing trade, or people? I mean, where would those walkers either come from the village, or would they come from for a walk in Cuxton and the Cuxton Valley and just pop in on the way, or are you expecting it to be a destination as part of the walk?
It already is. So Court Farming sits on the Pilgrim's Way, but also just below the North Downs Way. And that is a very popular walking and cycling destination. If you live in the village, you'll constantly cyclists going back and forth. There's mountain biking as well as road cycling, as well as ramblers who walk through the route down to Canterbury, as well as down to Rochester. I couldn't tell you if people drive up to the village and leave the cars there. I don't necessarily know if that's the case, but it's definitely people are walking constantly through the village with their backpacks on and kind of walking boots on, and as well as dog walkers, as you'd expect. But I couldn't comment on that as in a destination to drive to.
Thank you, Chair. Do you actually sell your beer in your premises?
Yes, so we'll be selling cask and draft beers as well as canned bottled beers. In the tap room and also in the Court Farm butchery. They're going to have their own range of beers brewed by us to be sold through through the butchers.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
I don't have any questions. So I come back to you for your...
Well, could I just point out that obviously they do use a separate entrance, but it's like 20 yards on the same drive. So there's one gate there, one gate there. So that's your separate entrance. That's still on the same single track. It's not like it's a different entrance. As Councillor Hackwell just said, these microbrewery things are quite good fun. So it's not just, oh, we'll have a little taste. It's quite a taste. So people get a bit more involved than it's being let on. You just reminded me the parking. The farmer's quite grumpy, to be fair, and he's got a little small courtyard where you're supposed to park, but he doesn't normally let people park there, so they park in front of my house. So that's a bit of an issue. You know, there's lots of issues. I won't be able to remember them all today because, like I said, I didn't really come prepared. I didn't really know what I was doing. This is all off the cuff. So, yeah, there's lots of issues that this is going to cause. It's not just, you know, oh, we'll have 20 people a week. How are you going to run a business on 20 people a week?
Okay. Is there anything further that you would like to add before we form a decision in due course?
Nothing major. There is if you look at the planning permission the Court Farm has, there is planning permission to move that car park from that central area. That's now becoming a farmers market at some point. That's within the same planning permission, but that car park will then move to something that's much more accessible for people. But other than that, no, I don't think we've got anything major to add.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Again, there's another application for a farmer's market that's been done. So there's another load of people going in there doing more stuff, parking, more cars, etc., etc. This is, like I say, this is nothing against these guys. This is just like the last straw. There's so much going on there. Yeah, it is a working farm, but really and truthfully, it's an industrial estate. If you went and looked at it, you would see it's like 2 tractors and loads of other stuff going on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you for coming. The committee will give some thought to the application and to what we've heard, and a decision will come within 5 days in writing. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. At least it wasn't as long as the other.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will need you to move that we go into committee.
Session.
Thank you. That concludes the business of the meeting. Thank you.